I believe farmers really want is automation. And if you have a autonomous tractor, like who cares? You got to make sure that the continuity of the work is being done properly.
Coming up, we're talking to Tim Bucher, the CEO of Agtonomy. We've had Tim on the podcast before, and we're checking in on the latest with his company.
The Modern Acre podcast explores the latest in business, investing, technology, and sustainability in agriculture, and we're your hosts, Tyler and Tim Nuss. If you'd like to dig deeper with The Modern Acre, check out our membership community, The Modern Acre Co-op. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Pinion. The economics of farming are increasingly difficult, and many producers are asking Pinion, the leading food and ag business advisory firm, questions around thin margins and cash flow. Farmers want to know how to calculate the total cost of running the business and determine their farm's true break-even. The answer is twofold. First, calculating beyond the field is critical. Second, ensure you know your true costs. If you're struggling with this, Pinion advisors can perform financial calculations that identify places to cut expenses and ways to optimize your farm business. Learn more at pinionglobal.com or hit the link in our show notes. All right, Tim, we used to celebrate every episode that is in increments of 50. This is our 350th episode. How does it feel, man?
Feels great. I can't believe we've done 350 episodes. Sometimes I'll be chatting with people who are like, oh, you have a podcast? Like how many episodes have you done? I'm like, oh, like 300. So they're like, whoa, that's crazy. And been doing it for 6 years, just heads down, plugging away. But it's crazy that we hit this mark.
Yeah. I just want to let you know that I think this is my last episode.
Signing off. So it's now a solo podcast here on out.
How much would you need to do this solo?
I don't know how people do solo podcasts. It is a grind, not being able to have someone to bounce ideas off of and get motivation to do it every week. It would be super tough. So props to the solo podcasters out there. Not for me.
Yeah, I do not think I could do it, but we will keep plugging away here on The Modern Acre. In celebration of our 350th episode, can you guys do us a favor? I'm going to give you 3 options of how you can support The Modern Acre. Okay, we've been doing this for over 6 years, 6.5 years, I think at this point, Tim. First option is share this podcast or one of the recent episodes with a friend. It helps us get to more people. Podcasts are not the easiest thing to share, they don't really go viral like social media does. So click your favorite episode, send it to a friend or colleague. It helps get it out there. That's option 1. Option 2, join our membership community. Have you heard of it? The Modern Acre Co-op. We have a group of people that are really builders in agriculture. We connect with each other. We have member calls every other month where we dive into investing or a certain area of technology and really get the group together to bounce ideas off each other. And it's a great community, and it's a way to support this podcast if you've been a longtime listener. Last option, subscribe to our newsletter. We had Jack on last week. We're doing this strategy series all about food and agriculture. So 3 options. It's not that hard, guys. You can do all 3 if you'd like. We'd really appreciate that. We're going to list those options in the show notes. Share it with a friend. Join the Modern Acre Co-op. Or at the bare minimum, Tim, sign up for the newsletter.
Great options, Ty. Well, I'm excited for this conversation, having Tim back on the podcast. The first conversation with Tim, we really got into his background. He's worked with some of the most influential people in Silicon Valley, working with Steve Jobs, Michael Dell, Bill Gates, and then really getting into the company that he founded, Agtonomy. He's a farmer up in Northern California, growing olives, growing wine grapes, and really developed the company Agtonomy to fit a need in his growing operations. So we got the scoop on the business and the origin story behind it. And in this conversation, we really get into all the progress that Agtonomy has been making over the past year and a half. They've just really gone all out on channel partnerships, working with a number of OEMs. And I think the interesting thing about Agtonomy is that they're kind of agnostic about who they partner with. They're very open-minded to integrate with a lot of different implement companies and tractor companies and really be the technology provider to make smart implements and equipment work in these operations.
Hey, Tim, it's good to have you back on the show. I think it's been a pretty busy year for you since we last spoke on the podcast, dug in a lot on your background, obviously your awesome career working for different leaders in Silicon Valley, and now your focus on Agtonomy. I'd like to just maybe start. We saw each other in person at World Agritech a month or so ago. Tell us like kind of your high level overview of your experience at World Agritech and kind of what you were on display with Agtonomy.
Yeah, well, first of all, Tyler, it's great to be with you and Tim. So thanks for having me on again. And it was wonderful to see you guys at World Agritech Summit there in San Francisco back in, March, about a month ago, a little more than a month ago. My greatest takeaway from that was just, I got to spend a lot of time with all the startup companies that were in the startup bin. I was actually doing some research for one of the panels I was on. And it was so neat to see the enthusiasm, the excitement, the ideas, the creativity. People don't realize just how many, opportunities there are in this industry. And I think we're just scratching the surface. So that was my key takeaway. The other thing is growers. There were a lot of growers there, more than I expected, which was really neat. That was kind of my top two takeaways.
Yeah, it was awesome to reconnect with you and chat about the latest and greatest and everything you have going on. So we'd love to kind of dig into some of the latest joint ventures and business development that you've been working on the past year. I don't know where you want to start because there's been so many, but maybe let's talk about the Bobcat deal and kind of what that means for the company.
Yeah, so we're actually working with 5 OEMs now, and we made some announcements at World Ag Expo in February with not just what I call power unit companies, or sometimes people refer to them as tractors. But the term tractor is kind of changing and morphing. I think it will continue to evolve. But also implement companies. What people don't realize is that for every tractor manufacturer, who also usually manufactures implements, there's probably 10 implement manufacturers. For the audience, there's implements. Sometimes people call them attachments, but that's where the real work is done, right? You don't just go tractoring, you go and do something. And so we've realized that the opportunities for digital transformation is more than just the main vehicle itself, right? The power unit or the tractor. So we're real excited to be working with, sprayer companies like On Target, electrostatic sprayers, Clemens, which is a big cultivating company, KCI, a big mowing company, and a company called Thiessen out of Canada that builds these incredible toolbars. And we co-developed a smart toolbar that dynamically changes by our camera system, where we see, any undulations in the ground and can make those adjustments versus an operator having to do that, which is very difficult to do when you're driving, 4 miles an hour or so. So, and Bobcat's, a fantastic company. They're well known in compact equipment, and they have quite a few models of different tractors. So, they made their announcement of the first Agtonomy enabled vehicle, and that's really the brand that we're focused on. Is even with the implement companies, they're putting Agtonomy enabled on it. They're putting, Agtonomy enabled on tractors. And that's been our focus with partners. We're trying to help them accelerate their visions, and ultimately help the end customers who are, desperate for help with labor shortages and all the other things that, you guys talk a lot about on your podcast. And I think your audience is very, very well aware of too.
No, I think it's super interesting. It reminds me of even Rivian, right? Of their commercial side of the business, doing the Amazon vans. At the bottom of the van, it says "powered by Rivian." Very small, but it's on.
Yes.
You can see it when you pass, and it's the same idea in terms of leveraging Rivian's core technology, which can be scaled to these other commercial customers.
Exactly right. It's so funny you say that, Tyler, because our headquarters in South San Francisco are right next to the Rivian Service Center, one of the biggest, I think, in Northern California there for Rivian. And, we see the vans, the Amazon vans and whatnot. And I usually do my one-on-ones walking by Rivian with, team members. And just the other day, I was telling my head of software engineering, I think Rivian is going to be more of an enterprise company, a B2B company, than even the B2C. So, but in agriculture and other industrial markets, it's that much more important because of that dealer network, something we touched briefly upon last time we spoke. And I think it's something you guys have had, some incredible guests on that really understand that well, including some big dealers that you've had on your podcast as well. It's so much more important to have that dealer network, that support, that service center, the parts. you got to keep this equipment running because it's equipment that's for your livelihood.
Totally. On that note, it sounds great, right? We're going to be OEM agnostic. We're going to work on different tractors, different implements. But I would imagine, my guess is that that's challenging, right? There's a reason a lot of people will focus on one product, one go-to-market solution, is because you can focus the team on that one application. So how are you managing that, working with all these different tractor solutions? Does that require all these different engineering functions working independently, or is there a way that you're able to manage the team and the scope to support all these different applications?
Yeah, no, and it is a really good question, right? Because as a startup, you want to be very focused. And in reality, it's allowed us to be super focused. So when I talked about these 5 companies we're working with, we don't build the equipment, right? They build the equipment. And it allows us to focus on the development of software and services. Yes, we did build some equipment for proof of concept and in order to have a vehicle upon which to develop our software. But that's the beauty, is that you can focus on the development of the core IP around all the machine learning and everything we're doing in terms of crop types and navigation and workload, right? It's not just about navigation. You have to understand the solutions. So if we weren't doing this and we were only focused on, say, one little vehicle or something like that, I don't think customers would be interested. And that's ultimately what I'd love to chat about at some point here in this podcast is what's really happening with our end customers. But I can assure you that our engineering team is very focused on, we don't have to have large procurement teams, manufacturing teams, things of that nature. We build prototypes, and then we work with these companies who know how to do it better than us.
Tim, I loved your explanation of implements and attachments actually doing the work. I think there's a lot of focus on software and on new tractors and electrification of tractors, but like the actual equipment that's doing the work, I think is overlooked in this area. So the fact that you're focused on it is really unique. Like when I look around our farm, walk around the equipment yard, we have all these different attachment bars and furrow bars that are all manual setups. So like when we go do a new crop, new application, and it's on 40-inch beds versus 60s, we've got a couple guys for multiple hours sliding equipment back and forth, setting these bars up, resetting them up. So I think no one's really like mentioned this to me before of like what an unlock that could be to have this be digitized and have software enabled for like furrow bars to adjust automatically. That's just a super big unlock. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And guess what? You have to dynamically make micro adjustments when you are an operator, even in a 48-inch or whatever your spacing is. And so this new smart toolbar, which is now in pilots, it has 6-way actuation. So it can independently shift, widths left and right. It can independently shift heights left and right. And it can even do a tilt as well, which is really important for permanent crops that, might have a berm in them, whether it's, orchards or vineyards or things of that nature. And so now, you have this auto adjusting piece of equipment that's dynamically responding to the terrain and to the crop. Whereas when a human's operating, I mean, you guys know this better than anyone, right? You've all been on tractors. You know what it's like to drive at, call it 3 miles an hour, right? Whatever it is, and actuate four levers. It's impossible. So instead of getting, 90% of the weeds mechanically, you might only be getting, 60% of the weeds. By bringing the technology to these implements and creating this ecosystem of smart implements, that's ultimately where the entire industry has to go. And quite honestly, it's even more important than the vehicles themselves, because you can actually have a manual operator who can then have the manipulation being done on the implement, through our own, through technology. So we've developed we don't do hardware, but we did one piece of hardware. We have a smart implement controller. And over ISO-bus, we basically give it to these implement manufacturers and they can embed it. And it's a protocol that we are also opening up to everyone. But it's a way to control the implements that have actuators on them through a little micro that sits on them. And the main vehicle, which has smarts, can actually do the commands.
That's super interesting. And is the smart toolbar compatible with like older tractors, or do you need like the latest and greatest technology in the tractor to actually deploy this technology behind the tractor?
The great thing is we've been working with these manufacturers, and it's not just for a specific vehicle. It can operate on other, vehicles that have ISO-bus. You need to have some kind of brain, on the tractor. There is a way to control it manually too, but it's really meant to be to achieve more efficiency in the work in the job that's being done. So yes, it's actually meant to be on other tractors, even other vehicles that might be electric and might be combustion engine, might be competitors of Agtonomy. We don't view it as competitors. We're just trying to help accelerate the ecosystem evolution, right? Because that's our ultimate goal.
Tim, where are you guys right now in terms of the product development, commercialization? Can you kind of give us a lay of the land of what the focus is right now?
Oh, Tyler, I was waiting for this question because I'm so excited about our pilot program 2024. We had a small pilot program in 2023, and it was incredible. We got the most phenomenal feedback from two very large customers. And this year we've expanded it to quite a few customers. And these customers are not small customers. The largest grower in the world in vineyards is Gallo. And, we're working as a matter of fact, I'm heading there after this podcast. We are working with Delicato, which is, probably the fifth largest grower in the world. And then, Treasury Wine Estates. I'm actually wearing a jacket from Treasury. They gave me a jacket with my name on it. And we always wear these bright yellow safety jackets, when we're operating in any of the pilots. But the point is, we're operating with real customers who are actually paying us, and we're doing real big jobs. We're now probably managing about 6,500 acres. And every week we're doing literally hundreds of acres fully, automatically. Because for us, we don't call it autonomy as much as automation, right? Ultimately, that's what I believe farmers really want is automation. And if you have a autonomous tractor, like who cares? You got to make sure that the continuity of the work is being done properly. So even in things like mowing, like right now we're in crazy mowing season in California, and the mowers don't have any smarts in them, but we sense the torque feedback, and the vehicle will actually slow down and speed up based upon how big the cover crop is. So just like a human would do, if you're bogging down, you're not going to sit there and say, I'm going to keep it at 4 miles an hour. Right, you're going to back off, let it catch up, and we automatically do that. So we have a lot of IP in this area because it's really around solutions for automation versus navigation autonomy. That's a very small part of it. So we have tens of vehicles out there. Every customer that we are working with has a minimum of 3 vehicles, and here's the coolest part: is that we don't operate them; our customer operates them. So they all have employees. And they're actually hiring, it's very difficult for them to find skilled labor. They're hiring a new kind of employee to operate this. Treasury, for example, is hiring ag tech operators. People who've never operated tractors before are now managing fleets of vehicles through the telefarmer user experience that Agtonomy has created.
Super cool. I think I saw the video from Treasury Estates doing the swarm approach where an operator had 3 vehicles going in the vineyard at once. Maybe just talk about like how big of an unlock that is. I think we've heard about kind of swarm capabilities with robotics for a while and like haven't really seen that commercialized, where it's typically like still like one-to-one operator to machine. Maybe talk to us about like how the swarm approach has been going commercially.
Yeah, Tim, it's really cool to see our customers posting about this. That was, and they're all super advanced, right? So we have Delicato, we have Camus down in the Gonzales area, we have Silver Oak. So we have some huge brands like Gallo, and we have some very prestigious brands. And that unlocking of multi-vehicle, I'm telling you, is the most important feature we've ever developed. And by the way, we accelerated our roadmap on that based upon customer feedback last year. So you don't see anyone else operating, 10 vehicles from one user experience. We designed our solution from the ground up to have that, and then we accelerated the feature to be ready at the end of 2023, where we got some testing done, and then we launched it in a big way this year with our Telefarmer 2.0 release that occurred in February. So there's a couple of key things that you have to have with that. Number one, you have to have a user experience that a consumer can operate, right? These are consumers. And, given our experience at Apple and Microsoft and other companies where user experience is paramount in consumer solutions, whether it's an iPhone or whether it's, a Surface or whatever it is, you really, if you can nail that, then operators can actually use that. A lot of my colleagues in other companies, they kind of have their own people operating the equipment, or they do a record and repeat. For us, we wanted it to be something that you could literally take Google Maps, get ingested automatically. You can basically do drawings, And then we find, all of the rows and can operate, very seamlessly. And you can take a job and say, I want to spray this, 1,000 acres. And, we prompt them back saying, okay, how many vehicles do you want? You can say 5. And then we automatically split that job into those 5. And we remember, whenever there's an issue, we've gotten the number of interventions down per day to, single digit. So it allows you to scale that way, right? People ask me, well, how many can you scale to? And I said, I don't really know. It could be 100, right? If you get it down to 0.5 interventions a day, you could scale quite easily to, tens of units for one operator. And that's where the ROI is just a no-brainer.
Yeah. No, this reminds me of when I was working at Zoox. Same kind of concept. It was more focused on obviously automobile autonomy, but the idea of there are going to be these moments where it's going to require an intervention, and can you have these remote operators? And it's that exact calculus, right? Of like, can you get the interventions down enough where you have one operator, which is, not a cheap gig, controlling, hundreds and hundreds of vehicles, right? And that's the key thing when you can get that profitable.
Exactly. That's exactly right. We put probably most of our engineering efforts on multi-vehicle features, and that's something that we've catapulted ahead of a lot of folks in this space because of that.
How are you thinking about just the ultimate commercialization here? You're doing a substantial pilot this year. How are you thinking about profitability? Are you looking at raising more rounds into the business, and kind of when do you feel like this is deployed at scale, at significant scale?
First of all, every startup is always raising money, so I'll be clear about that. I spend some of my days in the fields, and I spend most of my days with investors and raising money. I think if you were at World Agritech Summit and you heard me on a couple of panels, I talked about sort of the capital market it's more challenging for industrial applications than it was a year ago. We just raised a Series A late last year, and we are looking to do a next big round probably in late 2025. But it's commercialization. We have a much larger, kind of call it a mega pilot, that is gearing up for early 2025. And then commercialization with partners is going to be in the latter part of 2025. And that's where it really, makes sense, right? So the partnering model is great. It takes a little bit longer to get to scale, but once you get to scale, there's just no comparison, right? Gone are the days where we all stand up in front of, folks at conferences and say, we've got, 300 machines in the field. That's nothing compared to where we need to be. If you look at permanent crops and land maintenance alone, there's over the next 4 years, there's about 16 million units. You make a few of those automated, you're talking about a pretty interesting business model that has a monthly recurring service fee. So that's really our business model. It's a minuscule annual fee compared to what a skilled operator would cost, and you get the jobs done even better than you could with humans. But it's not about replacing humans. I want to make that clear to your audience. We can't hire enough people in agriculture. I always ask people, how many people do you know who work in agriculture? And they always say, none. I say, yeah, there's a reason for that.
Well, Tim, want to switch gears here a little bit, put your grower hat on. You obviously have a vineyard, you're a winemaker yourself. The industry seems like it's a little bit stressed right now with a lot of vineyards going out of production, like particularly in our area in Lodi, like see a lot of vineyards kind of turning over. It seems like the state of the market is a little bit in decline. Like, are you seeing that from your perspective? And like, how is kind of the wine market in general in California, given your view as a farmer yourself?
Yeah. And so first of all, to clarify, Tim, I'm also an olive farmer. So the olive business is very good. The wine business, it's harder for the smaller operations to make it. It's all supply and demand. There's oversupply probably right now. But here's the great thing is, when it comes to permanent crops, or what some people call high value crops, i.e. crops that are not in rotation, right? They're always there. Right now, I would say citrus is one of the hottest crops. And we have a big lemon project that we do, a citrus project that we're working in. So from an Agtonomy perspective, it doesn't really matter, right? If vineyards are down, citrus is up. If citrus is down, walnuts are up. It's basically we can operate on those crops that have trunks and open field as well, which is actually easier. But it's I would say that as a grape grower from a overall market perspective, yeah, I would say it's more down right now. But it's always been cyclical, right? You guys know this. Farming's always cyclical. When one crop is down, one crop is up, and you go through the cycles and you survive and you thrive.
No, I think that's exactly right. It's especially being able to be diversified, to be able to, pivot crops, I think is hugely critical. We've seen, when farmers are just over leveraged in one crop and maybe over leveraged with debt financing, that kind of creates a perfect storm when there's a down market.
Exactly, Tyler. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be growing almonds right now.
All right, Tim. Well, this has been awesome. Love catching up with you, hearing the latest and greatest. But before we wrap things up, there's a really, really key, important question I need to ask you that is more important than anything else we've discussed. It's how would you grade the 49ers draft?
Oh, I love this question. I'm pretty excited. I knew that they were going to try to get at least one wide receiver. I think they got two really interesting wide receivers. And, it's sort of like a backup plan for what may happen with Brandon and with Debo. But I'm super excited about that. I think the offensive line is what I really wanted to see some additional support in. And I think they got it. I think they got some good opportunities there. So overall, I'd give it an A rating. And I know we shouldn't be doing too much of this, but I'm so excited, guys, that I got to tell you this. This weekend, I'm spending the weekend in Carmel with the 49ers team and their coaching staff. They do these charitable weekends that I get to participate in, and I'm so excited to go to that. So I'll be in Carmel with the 49ers. And sorry for your audience who appreciates other teams. I totally respect that.
Yeah, Ty and I are very jealous of that. It's like worlds colliding with the Brock Purdy John Deere news of like Brock Purdy sponsored by John Deere. We deal in agriculture. Like everything is coming full circle. What's happening? And now there's this chief tractor officer. Like that'd be a great role for you, Tim, if you're not doing enough already to apply for that John Deere role.
Yeah, it's so neat to see Brock involved with John Deere, and even Bobcat. They have celebrities as well, and lifestyle celebrities, and home improvement folks, and it's kind of neat to see that happening, right? Where you're starting to see these TV ads and things. I just think it's cool for all of us in agriculture, in land maintenance and construction. That's where we really need to bring technology as more into those industrial markets with the celebrities as well.
Whatever gets Brock a little bit more cash. He's been on too good of a steal of a deal. So, whatever gets him more, I'm very pro Brock Purdy sponsorship. So we got to make sure he's taken care of it before he gets his big deal.
Well, if I get to drink a glass of wine with him this weekend, I'm going to get a picture, and you're the first two people I'm going to send it to. So let's see if we can make that happen.
Love it. Well, Tim, appreciate the Niner talk and the Agtonomy talk. Appreciate you having on. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, guys. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you. Keep up the great work.
So, Ty, what do you think of that conversation with Tim?
I love these check-in calls. We need to do this more, Tim. We don't have an issue of guest ideas at this point. I could print out a content calendar, an ideal content calendar for the next year, Tim. There's so many awesome people to talk to. But I do really love these checking in after a year or so since we talked. We don't have to focus on much of the backstory, and we can get into some of the tactics and the short-term strategy and how people are thinking about the market dynamics and how they're scaling their businesses in the short term. So I think we need to do more of this. Tim was a great person to do that with and just kind of jam out and, even hitting the 49ers draft, which I think is really, really important for this podcast.
Super important. Yeah, the people need to know what's going on with the 49ers. We're deep in the offseason, but rookie minicamp is starting up soon, Ty. We're getting close.
Tim, were you paying attention? What are the 3 things that people can do to support us hitting this milestone, celebrate with us 350 episodes? What were the 3 things?
Oh, put me on the spot, Ty. So share the podcast with a friend, join the Modern Acre Co-op, and subscribe to the newsletter. I nailed it.
Oh man, it's great to see when you're paying attention. That was awesome. All right, guys. Well, again, appreciate the support. Check the show notes. Do one of those 3 things. It would mean the world to us. And we will be back. I'm coming out of retirement. I'm going to be back for episode 351.